What I've learned by going to Brazil and giving of myself to others is how good it feels individually to serve others, and how my heart has grown. And
Man of Mastery podcast episode 19 with Brent Kassing, president of Ray of Hope, Amazon. Well, back-to-back Brents. Last week we had Brent Gleason of Taking Point Leadership, who shared lessons learned from the military elite teams he was part of that we can apply to corporate leadership, culture, and performance. This week, Brent Kassing joins the show to share 5 key lessons learned from running a charity mission to the Amazon. And whereas he initially thought he'd be the contributor applying corporate skills to a missionary organization, instead he's taken even more back personally and professionally in returning to the working world. But before we jump in to learn from what Brent had to say, let's try something a little different this week. Brent's white paper this week, again called 5 Lessons Businesses Can Learn from a Team of Missionaries, is available for free. And I'll tell you at the end of the episode how you can get that and where to find a link. Or you can jump right out to the website at manofmastery.com/019 for a link to that same paper. Now, last week's topic is so similar to this week's. I want to steer you once again to Brent Gleason's book called Taking Point Leadership. That's his first book, and it's available for sale on Amazon, their Taking Point Leadership website, and in book retailers nationally. That book runs about $27 in hardcover at full retail. I've got a copy or two to give away, and I'm going to do that this week by way of an Instagram contest. So check back on the Instagram page for Man of Mastery. That's at the Man of Mastery on Instagram. And at the end of this week, I'll run a contest, and you'll have a chance and instructions there on how to enter and win a free copy shipped to you of Taking Point Leadership. Okay, with that, let's head into the discussion with Brent. He'll talk about 5 main lessons learned: personnel optimization, flexible decision-making, selflessness, relaxation, and the big picture. What I'm taking away across the board is that our first world Western business and lifestyle approach, where we think life can be planned and that motion equals productivity, can really gain some insight and improvement from slowing down and applying lessons learned in a much more fluid and uncertain environment. So, actionable ideas to ponder and apply in our business world. 1, building a team around a growth mindset, trust, adaptability, and a laser-sharp, unified understanding of purpose. And 2 would be, no stranger to listeners here, is the value of simplifying, decluttering, and also beginning each day with a ritual of silence and contemplation. So those are my 2 takeaways this week on actionable items to put to work. All right, that being said, let's get into it with Brent Kassing of Ray of Hope, Amazon. Hey, today I have with me Brent Kassing, a good friend of mine from the corporate world. He's got almost 3 decades of experience as a consulting executive, specializing in corporate growth, transformation, and transactions. And also really interesting, and one of the reasons we've got Brent here today is he is president of the Ray of Hope Amazon organization, and he's put out a white paper called The 5 Lessons Businesses Can Learn from a Team of Missionaries. So we're going to dive into that today. Brent, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
absolutely, thanks, Michael. It's great to be a part of this podcast. I've really enjoyed what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Well, I should also just say, in addition to the work resume, husband, father of 2 beautiful daughters, avid Jayhawk, right? Can't go without mentioning
Absolutely.
that. Runner and annual Murph participant.
Absolutely.
All good stuff.
Keeping myself busy.
Good for you. Well, hey, man, tell me more about Ray of Hope, Amazon, and how you got started with that before we jump into some of the lessons you've taken away from it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. So, I was switching jobs. I was moving from Florida up to the D.C. area, and I went to a new church. I've been a churchgoer my whole life, but I think for most of it, I've spent I compartmentalized my church life, my work life separately. into different boxes. And after 40 or so years of going to church, there was a pastor at Capitol Church in Virginia who inspired me to go on a trip he was taking down to Haiti. This was in 2011. It was right after Haiti had their awful earthquake. And so I went and signed up. Didn't tell my wife or anybody I was doing it. I asked my dad to go with me, and I ended up going down to Haiti and discovered that this international mission work may be something I would like to get involved with. I think when people hear about mission work or international mission work, and believe me, I'm one of them, never in a million years did I think I would be doing this kind of work. Missionaries are weirdos. They wear weird hats and khaki pants, and they play guitar and they wear beads, right? So it's almost like one of those things. It's like, wait a second, now since then I've become that. So I came back. I moved from DC area to Kansas City. It happened that my new church I was going to Haiti for the first time that year when I came in. So I'm like, all right, this is a sign. I went with them to there. I got involved in, international outreach through the church, just to help out because, again, churches, just like a lot of places, could use professional and corporate guidance on, just basic management and operations. They're pastors. They're not necessarily in the business space. So I jumped in to help them with that, and that's how I eventually ended up going on a trip to the Amazon with an organization called Ray of Hope Amazon. So that's my story, and it's kind of crazy to think of this is where I've ended up, but I'm thankful for it, and it's been really amazing.
Yeah, nice. And you've done numerous international mission trips now. And I think what's really interesting and what sets up the white paper, the knowledge that you've captured to share, is that we, at different times in our lives, for each of us, we go looking for what that purpose is, what that thing is we can do to really make an impact. And as you're talking about, a lot of times for us in the corporate world, we go, okay, what lessons can I take from the business world that I might apply to help an organization like this? So you probably came at it that way, and you mentioned bringing maybe some of the business skills to the pastors and those organizations. And what's really interesting about this white paper you've written is 180 degrees from that. Lessons that you've taken away from a very different kind of work that are very applicable to bring back and potentially very useful to the business world.
Yes, exactly. I think it's been, I went down, and so again, just to set the premise, I was never a pastor or a preacher, a guitar player, prayer, any of the things you would typically associate with mission work. I went down there and I stood in the back, and I didn't want anyone to see me, and I just sort of was observing. But as I went back, and I'll be going back for my 10th time now later this year, I learned that the skill sets that I developed, and again, coming from the consulting world, were so applicable to the work down there that it was just very easy to transition into that kind of role. And then, as you said, as I've gone on the trips, I realized, wow, there's a lot of stuff that businesses can learn from this eclectic group of people that get together and go on these trips.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So the 5 points that you captured, and let's dive into them. They're personnel optimization, so quick decision-making and flexibility. 3, selflessness, relaxation. And 5, understanding the big picture. Yeah, those are all great stuff. Maybe on the surface we don't think relaxation and selflessness belong in the business world, but let's dive into each of them, because I read through the paper. I find it really interesting, and I think there's really great insight that all apply to businesses potentially if we're willing to take something back. So let's talk about personnel optimization first.
Yeah, sure. So I think if anyone tried to hire somebody, or if you've applied for a job, you will see how specific companies can be on what they're looking for. I don't care if it's not only do they want like you to be in that industry, but they want a very specific skill set in order to hire you into a particular role. And I don't really know how different it is, and maybe it's because of all the technology today that they can really pinpoint with analytics on specifically what you're looking for. but I don't want to be old man here, but it just seemed like there's an opportunity that if you hire smart people and they're talented, they can figure something out, versus the situation where it seems like today in the business world, you're hiring for a very specific role and just assume nobody can learn anything new. And so around personnel optimization, these teams that are brought together, it's really pretty simple. Who wants to go on the trip? All right, put your deposit down. Sounds good. You're in. And I think there's already a mentality of the people that join. Sure, they have concerns about, bugs and vaccinations and where I'm going to sleep and what I'm going to eat and those type of things. But generally, there's a mentality of people that go on any sort of international fishing trip that they do have some flexibility, and they're optimistic about getting something accomplished or what they want to do on the trip. But we certainly don't take it to a level of, I need to make sure I have A, B, and C, because those are the projects that we're going to be doing when we go up a visit.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting contrast between maybe today's corporate model of what can be a long, costly lead time to hire, and not only to hire, but then it's going to be a period of time before you really even can evaluate whether that hire was the right decision and worked out well, versus a very quick sign-up process that you're talking about for these trips, these volunteer trips. I think what I took away from what you wrote and some of what I inferred from it was that gather a group of people that are very laser focused on the mission, and meaning not in the term missionary, but the mission of the trip, the purpose of the trip, and what you guys are going to do. They're not so much focused on, hey, I'm going to earn a living. This is a particular role. Is it a fit for me? What does it mean to me and my career path? And maybe more of an internal perspective. It's more of an outward perspective of we're all coming together for something that is serving someone else.
Yeah, and that does make it easier, because I'm not actually having to pay anybody. There's no comp and career discussions, but I think at the same time there is that overall purpose that people are coming together for, and I think I think going back to what you just said, the time it takes to hire somebody and evaluate, it's almost like how much money could a company save by just saying, wow, this guy's really sharp. I don't know if he's great for this role, but let's just skip steps B, C, D, and E and bring him on, in a way, and see what happens, as opposed to going through this whole process. And then again, I'm simplifying things. I know there's a lot of processes you have to go through on corporations, but I do think that there's a way that you could streamline things and really focus on things besides the 6-month hiring process.
Right. Yeah. So certainly you want to have a fit, but maybe some of this is thinking a little bit more of a fit of capacity to learn and capability, as opposed to specific applicable experience. And it also sounded like from what I read in your white paper, that the nature of this causes people to be able to come in and open up. There's no ego necessarily attached to their involvement. There's no hierarchy per se as it comes to skills, or conversely limitations. And people, I think in these roles, from what you've captured, tend to be a little more open about what they've done, what they know, and what they don't. Like, to your point, I don't play guitar, stand up and sing. I don't have missionary experience. I'm a project manager. I'll be like the guy behind the scenes. You were pretty transparent about that, but then you came in and learned a new skill set. Now you're the guy here in the picture with the guitar and the funny hat.
Yeah. So, and I think the thing is, and I think naturally, Mike, we do think about stretching ourselves. I mean, on a variety of your previous podcasts, you've talked about, some of the physical fitness activities, and, how important it is to stretch yourself physically, and you want to be stretched that way. And the same thing mentally. You talked about some, breathing exercises and different things you do to stretch yourself mentally. There's a lot of people that, on this trip, they want to be stretched spiritually. They're putting themselves in uncomfortable situations. If you're not stretching and you're not stretching yourself into new roles or doing different things, you do become stale. The only way to grow is to expand yourself and to put yourself in uncomfortable things, like you did, I think, a couple weeks ago in Colorado. So that's part of it too. So
Yeah, no,
that's a really valuable valuable part of what people are looking for.
No, it's a great point about growth and challenging the comfort zone and getting outside the comfort zone to be able to evolve, whether it's physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And yeah, maybe that's the key takeaway on personnel, is that there's a mindset around growth and learning as an individual or as a professional that is probably a key skill set to look for in a hire.
Yeah. Do you want somebody that just wants to do that one job and do it the rest of their life or their career? Or do you want somebody that's willing to learn? And how valuable would that person be as they progress in their career and they take different roles and leadership roles in your company?
That's probably a great segue to flexibility and your second point around quick decision making and flexibility. How does that work in the Amazon region and taking a mission trip to a place that's very different from the corporate world?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because there's a lot of quick decision making, and then, as we'll talk a little bit, there's a lot of time of just chilling and hanging out. And so, we think we generally have an idea of where we're going on a day-to-day basis, but we don't always. And the communication in the jungle isn't always available. We are at times we go dark where there is no cell phone coverage. And there's also places where there's spotty coverage. And so when we get in there, and the idea is to go to a particular village, or if something happens in a particular village where we need to change what we think we're going to be doing there, a lot of what we do is we're meeting with groups of people. The whole village gets together, and then we meet with the kids. We split up into kids, and we do split up with moms and dads and teens, and we talk to them about what it means to be a Christian. We're not beating people over the head with it, but we're just trying to develop a relationship, and so we're doing that. And if something changes, if there's a need to go visit somebody's house, or if we need to change the schedule and all those kinds of things, we change the schedule. We just do it right there. I mean, there's no board meeting we go to, or there's no change control board. It's okay. We thought we were going to go to this village. Now we're going to this village. Or we're going to do something in the morning. We're going to do something in the afternoon. So it's just a situation where the flexibility, you have to be extremely flexible regarding what you're going to do. And kind of a funny thing, I beat people over the head this last trip was, people wanted to know where we're going. As I said, we'll get there when we get there. We'll start when we begin, and we'll finish when we're end, because that's the situation that we were in. So as I thought about that situation down there, and so we just change what we're going to do when we go into different places, I think about the business and, what happens when there is a new market entry, or maybe the situation changed at your company, or something you thought you were going to be doing that day had changed, or maybe somebody left the firm or somebody joined the firm. What's the process that you have to go through that maybe causes just this whole, I don't want to say just sort of lethargic approach that a lot of businesses have to making decisions.
Right. Yeah. So I've got a very similar interview coming up as well with another Brent Kassing, who has some similar parallels, taking lessons from his military background to the corporate world. And one of the things that is so important for those guys is that they do plan and train and rehearse relentlessly, but they also realize that it's very rare that a plan gets executed as planned. Things always change, and they talk about volatile, uncertain, complex environments where they have to, in the end, they plan for adaptation, adapt and overcome. So I think,
right.
and, this is something I had to learn in the corporate world as well, is I think particularly in the American corporate mindset, is we believe we can plan in detail to the extent that we anticipate everything and then execute. And it just doesn't happen that way. Things are always going to change on you. So maybe it's more of, again, mindset, anticipating that change will have to happen, training for adaptability, and maybe there's even implication there to corporate structures, and not setting up a structure that is so rigidly aligned to a plan that may need to change that then you're backed into a corner and don't have the flexibility for, maybe it's decentralized decision making, maybe it's empowered employees for decisions that need to make those adaptations.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's interesting because we both worked on, like, there's the regular corporate business, and then there's a large system implementation that may be taking place, which is which essentially requires a separate type of organization, a program management office, and darn these projects, as much as the command and control that comes from the corporate world or the large company world that they used to live in on these projects, where you have deadlines and you're paying consultants lots of money to be there every month, and you have everyone with incentives to complete these projects, there's this natural empowerment that takes place because you simply cannot run everything through your boss anymore, or nothing will happen on that project, right? And what's interesting is you'll see companies go through these large transformational projects, and then when the project's over, where they're making those quick decisions and they've empowered people to do all these amazing things, they go back into the regular world or the regular corporate world, and it's back to everything by consensus, no empowerment, back to the old way of doing things. And it's been something I've seen, and I've always wondered what's the deal there. It worked, it was successful, the people liked it, and then now you're back to the old way of doing things again.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe it's the difference between mobilizing a project type of organization versus an ongoing operational organization. And how do we maybe take the best of both?
Yeah, and I think what you said there is, I think the planning for flexibility, which sounds kind of funny, but you have to plan on that. And in my current role, that's what we tell people for these companies is we're going to lay out this game plan for the next 2 to 3 years. But these systems are so complex. There may be a third party outside the company that says, you know what, we know that you're doing a project and you don't want us to change anything, but we've just changed it. And that's something that's completely out of your control. So you have to plan on that flexibility and set up a structure to do so versus being surprised by it.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. Well, to that end, let's talk about maybe success and what defines success and success metrics. And you talk about here in your white paper, the third point of selflessness, which I think is about being part of something, the mission you guys are in for the folks you work with down in the Amazon. So talk a little bit more about that, just as context.
Yeah, so what we do is Manaus, Brazil is it's in the Amazon. It's right, technically it's in the jungle, and it's really cut off. It's a big city, about 2 million people, but it's cut off from a lot of the places elsewhere in Brazil for a lot of good reasons. The Amazon River and lots of jungle. So not like the United States where there's super highways all over the place. Down there it's cut off. So when we go down there, the team of about 20 people on my team and 20 people from Ray of Hope, which includes translators and a variety of other people, we rent a rather large boat, and we essentially live on the boat for the time we're down there. So you're eating, sleeping, you're bringing everything you need onto that boat, including all the food. You make all the food on your boat, and we all work together. The people we go visit are the villages and tribes that live along the Amazon River. And there's just this scattering of people groups all along the river. Some very small, 2 or 3 families, some larger, maybe 400 or 500 people, and some bigger cities in the thousands. And what we do is we go out there and we look for the neediest of the neediest people, not just looking to provide them with spiritual assistance, but medicine, food, clothing. And we visit them. And because of where they're located, there's not necessarily, they don't get a lot of visitors. There's not a lot of people driving by. And of course, the water, it makes it hard. So not only is there water and there's not the jungle, it's also where they have to be living. And so we go visit them, and we seek those people out. And we hear about there's somebody down here, and sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it's not a surprise, and we go visit them. So that's what we're doing when we're going out there. There's nothing we want from these people at all. We're just there to talk to them and to let them know that that somebody cares about them, that we love them, that God loves them, and it's good. And we go out there and we do our best we can for that particular day or those 2 days to make that day amazing for them on that particular moment.
It's so amazing. And one of the points you brought out in terms of selflessness, like you just said, you're not looking for anything in return from them. And your whole purpose for being there is to serve them in some way and to try to make that day as fun for them as possible. So it's this in terms of success criteria and how you know how you've done. We don't have something data driven. It's not like the corporate world where we're accruing bonus, outdoing your peers, racking up commissions. This is you guys as a team doing something, and you're going to know that it was right because you're going to feel it.
Right. And I think it's one of the things that I implore on the team, and it's not really that hard to do, is, and I've been part of different organizations where they foster internal competition to be successful. And then there's other ones that are more team-based or team-focused. And I'm a team-focused guy, and I'm not saying that I'm better than other people or that those other systems don't work, but I'm a team guy. That's where I like to work in the team, and I like to build and be successful as a team. And on these, when we're out in the villages and when we're doing this week or 2 weeks out in the jungle, nobody's chalking up, hey, I talked to this number of people, or I made some sales today, or anything like that. It's really not the purpose, because we're all supporting each other, because there's the emotional and spiritual toll it takes on us as individuals when we're down there. And so we're not only there for the villagers, we're also there for everyone on our team, and we're also there to support the other people from Ray of Hope. And so when the leaders of Ray of Hope down there in Manaus ask us to do something, my answer is always yes. Wherever you want us to go, wherever the need is, the answer is yes. And it's not about us. It's all about them and their ministry.
Yeah, that's incredible. So team success and trying to take some lessons back to the corporate world, I can see where, well, certainly in the corporate world, we talk about wanting diversity. A lot of organizations talk about fostering respectful disagreement and intellectual discourse, but oftentimes that's not really the case. You get into politics and people don't really want disagreement. As you said, decision-making by consensus. What have you learned from, you've got a very diverse group of people. You're going to be under all kinds of stress of uncertainty and environment and different things that could cause disagreement or foster things amongst a group and a team that would be challenging on a mission like this. Is there anything to take away from that applies back to the corporate team environment?
Yeah, I think for me, what I've learned by going to Brazil and giving of myself to others, mostly time and money, because all these trips cost money and time, is how good it feels individually to serve others, and how my heart has grown. And I've not always been this way at all, believe me. It was not always about others. A lot of my career and a lot of my life was about me and what can I get. And so these trips helped me from that perspective, on what it takes and how you can be successful by serving others and how good that makes you feel. And I think the other thing is, so bringing it back into the business world, for me, it's again taking me from just being focused on myself at work or at my client sites or as I travel. It's changed me to see how can I help others in the corporate environment, and how can we be successful as a team and as a company. And that's where I think a lot of times, by making that first step of trust in others and helping others with them seeing that you're genuinely helping them in their career. Maybe it's a peer, maybe it's a superior or somebody else that you're working with your client base, that, hey, this person is in it for my success, not just for an individual success or that company's success. So that's for me, that's what I've brought back. And I try to foster that on my projects, that, hey, let's look out for each other and let's be a team and let's be successful as a team. So that's what I've taken back from that.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. And we're going to get to your fifth point here in just a couple of minutes on big picture, which I think would be one other way of saying, if you could take your eyes off of yourself and your own aspirations to really be part of team success, what that in the corporate world, what that team success really ought to mean is about ultimately what client you serve or what purpose you serve as a business. It's not about your company. It's not about your career path. It's not about you or even your peers. It's ultimately about who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to draw one more parallel back to this other interview that's going to run back to back with yours, because I think it fits together so well. Brent Gleason's book, Taking Point Leadership, he talks about, I think one of the things I really love about it is culture. For him, he talks about culture, defining a cultural organization being everything to its success and employee engagement and productivity. And one of the key things he's got about building a productive culture that retains and motivates and makes people productive is trust. And you mentioned trust as well in an organizational structure or a team.
Yeah, I can't say I always cared about trust either. So I've come a long way, but as I've grown older, trust is probably right there at the very top. Is that if you trust your boss and your peers, what they're telling you, good or bad. So this isn't supposed to be just happy talk. As far as, hey, everything's great. But if you have that trust in your culture so that you know that people's motivations are true and genuine versus, I wonder what's going on there. That's kind of odd. Once you have the trust established, you're comfortable and you know that people are doing what's right for the organization versus, I wonder if that guy's, doing something behind my back or there's something weird going on that's uncomfortable. So amen on trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm the same way, right? We all learn as we go, and one of the things I've really been exploring in this whole mastery journey is around authenticity, and to me that's a component of trust. Authenticity, to me, meaning that you are doing what you say and saying what you do, and that to me is probably one of the most basic elements to building trust. If you're acting differently than you say you're going to, or you're saying one thing to one crowd and another to another, then that's where it breaks down. So it sounds simple, but after decades of seeing bad examples and bad behaviors and bad actors in the corporate world, trust is fundamental to everything.
Yeah, and I think there's enough good stories out there, and you're certainly highlighting them on this podcast, of you don't have to be evil and bad to be successful in business. You can do amazing, honest, good things, and that's the way to get it done. I think a lot of times you sort of, obviously the bad stuff's the sexy stuff that people read about, but there's a lot of great companies doing things the right way.
That's a great way to say it. Okay, so your fourth point, relaxation, and you alluded to it earlier, is sometimes you're rocking along and there's a lot of stuff going on, whether it's to plan or not to plan, and then there are other times where things just come to a halt.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I value is between the villages, there's obviously, we're on a boat and it takes hours to get to different places, so you have your downtime. And it took a while for me to figure out what to do with my downtime, because I'm not, you're not connected. There's no cell phone service, and you're just you're there. We're in hammocks. It's a great time to take a nap. That's one thing. But what I've learned is to appreciate being kind of disconnected and just relaxing and using that time to study, to read, and to talk to others, or just be by myself. And I've really come to enjoy that, and I've really tried to think about how I can bring some of those principles back to me. One of those principles is, let's face it, all of us voluntarily do things that annoy us. So let me explain that. You may watch a TV show that all you do is yell at the TV, or you may read somebody or follow somebody on social media and you're like, all they do is get you mad. Or you may interact with somebody, or you may voluntarily go, you may have a job that just drives you crazy, but you're not willing to go find that other job. During my time of relaxation where I'm not connected, I'm disconnected, and it's just me and the water and the boat, it gives me time, what I call the big giant filter of life. And I think about, during this time and during this relaxation, what are those things when I come back to civilization do I no longer miss? And when I come back, I'm always like, well, I'm not following that person anymore. I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing that anymore. And I go from there. So for me, it's my annual revival to just sort of relax and understand and appreciate that quiet time, which is something I guess I was pretty terrible at for the first 40 years of my life.
Yeah, I don't think it's something traditionally in Western cultures that we're all that well acquainted with. In the modern world, we think productivity is all about sort of forward motion and speed and pace of activity, and somewhat counterintuitively is stillness, quiet, silence, some time to actually just, as you said, sort of refresh can be super productive. In fact, I think Bill Gates was well known for taking, I don't know if it was a week long retreat each year that he would just go away and nobody knew where he was, and he would come back with all these crazy business ideas he would put in motion.
Yeah, I think it's that you have to be doing something to be productive. I've actually find some of my best business ideas I go for runs, and that's my time alone to go run. I run alone, usually don't have any music or anything, and that's my time of my quiet time of thinking. And I think there's a lot of times when, we just need to learn to appreciate that time of I'm just sitting at my desk or somewhere and thinking, and it's okay to think. And I think to others around you, they may look like you're just spaced off, or you're just sitting there with your eyes closed, but you're meditating or you're doing what you need to do, and that's okay. And I think this is one of the key lessons for me coming out of this was the ability to just sort of relax and accept that time and realize that can be just as productive as anything else I may be doing.
Right. Yeah. I this summer I took my son for a week, 5 days to the Mount Whitney area, camping, hiking, no cell phone signal whatsoever. So we were with a group, so you weren't in solitude, but you are unplugged and you're in nature. And there's something about that exposure to nature as well that's grounding. But that week to me was I read, I journaled, I thought, and I came back with so much inspiration and direction for myself, sort of the week-long equivalent to what you're talking about in maybe going for a run, or people talk about doing their best thinking in the shower. And I think there's a science to it of getting your brainwave settled down from an alpha wave to a beta wave state where creativity and insight comes from. That's not necessarily the focused conscious thought.
Yeah, I do believe in that, and I think throughout the Bible it talks about prayer and being that, and that we see that over and over, so that's again prayer time for me. But there's the other ways to do it as well. But it's definitely something I've come to appreciate, and also something I attempt to do. That first thing in the morning type of thing is before I tackle the day is, okay, let's breathe. Let's think about what's going on. I have a daily devotional I do, but that's my time to start versus, hey, what emails did I get in last night?
Yeah, that's a great way to bring it back to something that's maybe applicable on the daily side of things, daily practice. It's great when we can unplug for a week or two on a mission or a trip, but yeah, what do we do each day to conquer the day?
Yeah, I think that's really valuable, and I totally agree with you. So there's the wake up time, and then there's the night time, and I think we have so much junk that we fill our lives with on a day-to-day basis. So I simply don't accept the I don't have time excuse from anybody. If you're an alarm person, said it earlier, get up, work on it, and it doesn't have to be something that you start off just like running or anything you're starting new. You don't start running every day the first time you start to go running, or you don't do 20 pull-ups the first time you try a pull-up. It's a process. Try it 3 times a week, and just start and work on it, and then work on getting that habit. And then that's a way that you can get through a lot of these changes in your life where there's things you should be doing. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed, whether it's any sort of self-improvement, because it's so excessive so early. It's start slow, get it going, and then optimize.
Yeah, I like that. And you mentioned breathing somewhere in there as well. That's something I've been learning. I mean, we've always got time for that. There's always 5 minutes somewhere in the day, in the morning, whatever it is. There's no way 5 minutes is a barrier to actually setting yourself off in the right direction in the morning or during the day. And that's a great time to do some breathing exercises to relax or to find some silence and some perspective.
And I'm really a big fan of breathing like 24 hours a day. I just keep doing it.
Awesome. All right, well, let's hit your fifth point here. Great way to wrap up. Big picture. What did you take away from missions?
Yeah, so our trips, our true mission is to act the eyes and ears, hands and feet of Jesus and show his love to the people who live along the river. That's our mission. It's very simple. It's very complex, what we're having to do. It's hard. It's difficult. It's challenging, all those kinds of things. But that's our mission. And everyone on the trip knows what we're there for and why we're there. It's not about us. It's about them. And it's about what we can do for others. And I think when as I wrapped up that white paper and I wrap up this conversation today here with you, Michael, is that's what I take away when I come to the business world and I think about whether it's a project we're on or that organization. What is it that you do here? And I think a lot of times that gets lost. The culture that we've talked about earlier today doesn't necessarily emphasize here's why we are here today. And this goes beyond just a slogan that a corporation may have on their website or some posters inside their building. It's about where are we going and why are we here as a company and what are we trying to do? I think there's some companies that bring that out of their employees very well. And there's other ones that we're just a company and people really have no idea what their company is, really direction they're going. And I think that's the thing is I think obviously my point here is that if you understand the big picture of what your company is trying to do, then that decision making, that hiring, everything you're doing is a lot easier. But if there's confusion as to what you're trying to do as a company, then I can't see how you can possibly operate efficiently at all.
Yeah, that clarity, it seems like it would be common, but I think it's actually uncommon for companies to have well, we talked about culture, and I believe that culture is defined by either action or inaction. One of the actions I think companies can take or not take is clarity and focus on the mission, what it is they do. And you talked about service. I brought a consultant, branding consultant, into one of my startup companies, and it was amazing to me what almost adversity there was to taking the time and a very minor expense to do this, but taking some time to actually sit around a table and define, what do we do? How do we describe what it is we're here to do, how we serve our clients, who our clients are? Really, in the end, from a branding exercise perspective, like you're saying, it's not necessarily about that slogan or that catchphrase. The exercise culminated in something that sounds simple, but it was amazingly difficult, is define in one word what it is that you're here to do as an organization, as a team. If you think about that and try to apply it to what you do in the business world or maybe a mission world or a charity world or something like that, if you can really boil things down to one word, how you serve, who you serve, what you do, then that's a pretty cool way to get clarity on that mission.
Yeah, I just, I'm a big fan of all that because I just think it makes everyone in the company. So when there's a decision that has to be made, you're like, does this fit what we're trying to do? And it's like, yes or no. And I think we're companies and especially consultants, because as a consultant, we naturally think we can do anything, right? Any problem, anything, we can do it. Of course we can do it. Have you ever done it before? No, but we could do it. And I think when you have that mission or that vision, or you have that understanding of what your business is, it helps you make, okay, this is the type of work, or this is the kind of things we want to do, or these are the type of people we're going to hire, versus, sort of being disjointed and going after those particular opportunities or business of hiring people, are saying, well, we kind of want to go that direction. We've never done it before. And then the next thing you know, you have a company that's in a variety of businesses, but really you're only good at one, and you sort of lost your way. And that's where I think having that understanding of the big picture is so helpful. It helps just across the board.
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it and to wrap it up is you can have that one thing that you come back to that is the check, the test against everything else. Does this align to that one thing that we do? Yes or no? So that could be organizationally, it could be how we align, it could be what we do as a business, it could be how we execute. Yeah, I think that's interesting because it would allow you rigidity to that mission, but flexibility in everything else.
Right. As long as we're heading down this path, you're empowered to go chase it versus everyone going off on their own way. Yep.
Is your white paper published, or if not, I can certainly link to it with this podcast. And then I also want to make sure people know where to go find the Ray of Hope organization if they're interested in getting involved.
Sure, absolutely. I have a website, brentkassing.com, where the white paper is out there and published. The name of the organization that I work with is called Ray of Hope Amazon. So it's rayofhopeamazon.org. So you can connect through my website or through that organization. If you would like to donate to our cause, we're always happy to receive donations. But I think for me, what I typically tell people is I really want you to come serve with me, serve locally, globally, whatever gifts you've been provided, go out there and serve. And so ideally, I'd love to have more people come with me on trips. If I have to take 2 or 3 or 4 trips to go down there with a group of people of 20, I'll do it because that's where I think I need to go.
How long do your trips typically last?
That's about 8 to 10 days typically.
All right, man. Well, sign me up. I don't have to know how to sing or play guitar, right?
Absolutely not.
Count me in, man. I really appreciate you sharing. It's awesome work that you guys are doing down there, and inspiring that you can not only help people with that, but then you bring back these lessons to apply in business and everyday life. Really appreciate you sharing, Brent.
You're welcome, Mike, and best of luck with this podcast. I've really enjoyed it.
That was just such great insight we can take and apply back to the business world and even our personal lives. And I mentioned at the beginning 2 things I'm taking away as actionable. And just to boil it down, if you got to start simple and just take one, as Brent mentioned, building the habit of a new routine, such as a morning ritual, something like that. You don't have to boil the ocean. In fact, if you do too big, too fast, too much, you're just gonna burn out, and you won't build an enduring habit. So as he suggested, start small, start short, start several days a week, and then work up towards a consistency of daily, and then lengthen your practice. So that'd be a great single one to take away and work on if you need just one. All right, so go check out the show notes at manofmastery.com/019, and be sure to link to both Brent's white paper, have a read of the full content there, and the Ray of Hope Amazon organization, and really think about whether you can put some resources to that, your time and your volunteering, probably most importantly, or if you can support it financially, then get in touch with Brent, and I'm sure he can give you more information there as well. And then just a reminder on the Instagram giveaway this week, check back there for Taking Point Leadership and how to get a chance to win a free copy of Brent Gleason's book from last week. Okay, that's it for this week. Coming up next week, we have another guest talking about high performance habits for a happy, fulfilling, elite level life.